Risk of Rain started pretty organically.
We're at college at UW and playing a lot of games at the time, and we felt like there wasn't quite enough kind of games we could play together, both me and Duncan, so we decided to write down our own game and how would we do it.
This is the holy grail, I guess.
This was like one night or 2 nights of hanging out and essentially designing the game that we would play if we could make the game, and this turned into
Risk of Rain, yeah.
There's like the director, there's ideas for like the captain and the engineer, the gunner, the navigator.
I've always tinkered with making games, and so it was just a natural extension of like, what if we just made a game?
Risk of Rain as a franchise is really interesting because it started off as a sort of like 2D sort of side-scrolling game, which is like very old school. When it came out, it was very refreshing.
We knew that we wanted it to be simple. We also really like platformers. And so I think we've always had a soft spot for side-scrolling games.
The thing that really captured my attention was the color palette, which had these soft pale colors, these purples and magentas. It wasn't this extremely bright and poppy and colorful things that you usually get when you see pixel art. This showed to me that there's a very particular aesthetic choice being made here, and it really had a strong impact on the music that I decided to write.
We found an amazing composer, just kind of by luck. We went to YouTube and we typed in like best music, top 10 video games or something.
I think there was a lot of games that have like good background music or music that doesn't like compete with the gameplay, and I think we wanted something that was more forward in the game, and I think Chris does like a really great job of that.
I'm writing music that is very close to the music that I would write on my own if I was writing an album.
I think the original Risk of Rain resonated so well with people was that it had familiar game design to other games that were popular at the time.
I like that you have to survive. You don't get a lot of those games that make you feel like you're constantly about to die. You are always at risk of rain and death as you play this game.
There's plenty of games out there that have very thorough tutorials and are very protective of you while you're trying to go through. What this game just goes, hey, figure it out. Good luck.
I think players love pure chaos. They want to get as many items as possible, go as far as they can. It just needs to be as frantic as possible.
I think seeking the perfect run is the goal of the playership. I know it's my goal. I don't want to die anywhere. I want to hit all the bosses that I want to hit. I want to get the items that I want.
It's the build-up, right? It's going from nothing to something crazy, and this feeling of power is unmatched.
And that unpredictability, but being able to do it the way that you want, I think is the key to the game's success.
I think that Risk of Rain resonated a lot with people because it's simultaneously very approachable and familiar, but also unique.
The devs just had this innate feeling for the satisfaction of piling on tons and tons of items, practically no limit, and just feeling really powerful. And also the games give you a bunch of characters with their own unlocks, their own secrets to find, and crucially, it doesn't overcomplicate or over-monetize that stuff.
Easy to pick up, but very hard to master was something that we wanted, and it worked out pretty well.
Multiplayer has always been really our ace in the hole for the genre. There isn't very many multiplayer roguelikes.
And Risk of Rain was a great hangout game because it had those kind of nice moments of quiet where we could just be going around exploring, looking for items, and just chit-chat about our lives. And then it would have those big, intense moments of action when you would activate the teleporter and tons of enemies would come flying in at you.
We knew we were going to make a sequel to Risk of Rain eventually.
We took enough time from Risk of Rain 1 that we kind of felt re-energized about the game.
It was like 4 years between Risk 1 and Risk 2 before we started to like really work on it.
We just didn't want to do a super safe sequel. We wanted it to be exciting. We wanted it to be kind of risky. Haha.
And that's kind of when like the perspective changed, and we jokingly suggested doing it in 3D.
I was following Duncan and Paul's Tumblr dev blog. They're describing how to turn this 2D game into a 3D one. I thought it was really fascinating. I was so eager to get my hands on it.
I'd say I was pretty skeptical, but in the end, Risk of Rain 2 really nailed it. I would compare it to Super Mario 64 in that, yeah, it's different in a lot of ways from when the game started in 2D, but it still manages to preserve that essence and give you the same feeling while you're playing it. That's most important.
I think the most important considerations with Risk of Rain 2 was making sure that we're still pushing boundaries and we're doing something that's interesting to us as well.
With Risk of Rain 2, we knew we needed some extra people. We wanted to focus on making the game.
What really impressed us with Gearbox was that they gave us the freedom to do exactly the game we were making.
They were looking for a partner to help them bring it out to the market, not only just on PC, but also Steam, Epic, and then the consoles eventually.
Gearbox has brought some of the AAA game development firepower that you might expect from a big company like this, while also trying really hard to respect the origins of the franchise of Risk of Rain.
Working with Gearbox was the right move for sure, just because they could get so many eyes on it all at once.
The co-development process is always a really tricky one because you're trying to understand what is yours to work on and what is theirs. How do you build trust with the franchise owners, in this case Hopu, to make sure that you are making things that not only make them excited, but that you believe will make the user excited.
They wanted to make a really great game and they succeeded at that, and I think one of the things we can do is sort of continue that development in their spirit while at the same time just being able to show the game and bring it to a lot more people.
When we were kind of doing the whole passing of the torch with the franchise, one of the many conversations we had was about lore.
I was asked to make a glyph language for Lemurians. Lemurians get their name from the lost continent Lemuria. It was a combination of Indian, Madagascar, and Australian references. As lore master, what I'm doing is I'm making sure that new content can be seamlessly blended with content that exists already in the franchise. So what people are looking for going forward out of their gameplay, it still feels like Risk of Rain.
The core for the style is that we have to keep it simple, but also interesting, because it's art and we need to make it pretty.
I love seeing what our devs do. They are extremely talented. I love it. It sounds ridiculous, but I get excited, I get giddy whenever I see something that Claire, who works in art, what she's making up.
When the player experienced the game, I wanted them to feel like everything around them is supporting the storytelling. I want them to stop and look at the environment like, wow, this is pretty. I know the combat is always intense, but that's what I want them to do. Just stop and look.
Just looking at this new animation that Drew passed on to us, if the attack is that he will be able to track the player 360, then he needs to be in more like a neutral pose maybe, so it doesn't look weird.
If someone is really having a lot of fun making a game, I think it does show in the final quality. You can just tell they had fun making it.
I think a lot of people associate Risk of Rain directly with its power fantasy, which is totally fair. But when I think about Risk of Rain, I associate it better with its challenge system and how you overcome them.
This game challenges you to mix up your style. As you're completing challenges, you get new survivors, and that challenges the way you play all over again. And then you stack that with unpredictable map rotation, different items that you get from the chest. It seems to be something that really just resonates with our users.
Risk of Rain 2 honestly kind of feels like a game from a simpler time. It really does preserve the essence of the original, which came out in 2013. And I think that balance of simplicity and excess is why it resonates.
It's such a loved title, and the community is really a crucial part of the franchise.
I constantly put myself in the shoes of gamers because I still game too. Your feedback is valuable. It doesn't fall on deaf ears. We listen to everything.
Gearbox and the teams that they're working with are not only very talented, but also very passionate about the game. I think the right thing to do would be to hand it off to someone else and let them take the reins and just see what the potential is for the game in the future.
Survivors of the Void introduced not just like new maps and new survivors, but like new mechanics, new enemy types, new lore.
Players expect fun survivors, cool bosses, discovering unknown places, and probably the music. Chris Tudulu is really good. I love every single thing that he's done from the beginning up until this point with where we're at with Survivors of the Void.
I want to introduce new elements to the music, but don't lose the core thing that makes Risk of Rain music Risk of Rain music. When we did Survivors of the Void, I had this concept that the music will be much darker, so I tried to go into that direction.
We're thinking a lot about what the game is missing with Survivors, like what's the different playstyle that we haven't explored, or what's been craving by the community, and how can we satisfy them.
I think my favorite memory is probably the release date of the Void DLC. I could not kill the Voidling. I don't know why. Within the first like 30 minutes to an hour, fought the Voidling, and I was like, oh, okay, maybe I'll get him on the next one. I died. Maybe I'll get him on the next one. It took 21 hours to kill him. So that was definitely a journey for me. A very fun and memorable experience for sure.
There is an element of familiarity, but there's also a lot of wonder. There's a lot to discover.
I think Risk of Rain is made for consoles. It feels great. I can sit down on the couch. I can blow through a run or two in the amount of time that, me, a dad, usually has to play games.
It's important to support all of the platforms because we have users out there already on those things, such as Switch and Xbox and PlayStation, obviously PC. We have a huge fan base, and we need to do right by them by supporting this content on all those platforms.
One of the things we are doing with the console release for the Survivors of the Void is redoing the entire code base from the ground up.
The thing that I'm most proud of, I think, is that we were able to unify those code bases and be able to deliver future content to players across all the platforms as soon as we can with an experience that matches the vision that Hopu had for the game. It makes me proud to be able to serve the fans and the players in a way that ultimately gives them a better game.
While the programming team has been focusing on the porting effort for Survivors on consoles, the development team has been working on DLC 2, or Seekers of the Storm.
For the plot of Seekers of the Storm, what we wanted to accomplish was to give players a peek at the planet after its guardian was gone.
Seekers of the Storm, it is an entirely new expansion pack that'll be similar in size to Survivors of the Void, which is to say, there's going to be a lot of content. It's going to have new survivors, a bunch of new maps. It's also going to have items.
We want to prove to the fans that we know what Risk of Rain is. We want to improve player experience when they're playing the game.
I've seen Seekers of the Storm content. It's really amazing seeing a lot of the stuff that they've been working on.
This is looking good. This is where you make dead ends, right? Where I get lost every time. Okay, I like you. I like you very much for that, yeah. Risk of Rain Hostile World is a isometric take on the Risk of Rain franchise. Anybody that's a fan of the franchise will find pieces of what they like from Risk of Rain in our mobile game. You play missions with your squad that you build, swap between your survivors within the mission, and bring as much destruction as you can.
It's a new space station, right?
That's the prototype for the temple.
Everything is going to be deployed. The bus will come from the ground. Like it's like capture into a crystal, but when it's fully activated, it's going to be unleashed, and you have to fight the bus and all the monsters. Awesome. It's a game made for mobile, but still we really wanted to make a game that is skill-based, that is satisfying just like the previous titles. Everything is made so that the action is intense without overwhelming the player.
This is the first time that Risk of Rain is venturing into mobile, and so I'm expecting some pretty Christmas-light pew-pew action.
Risk of Rain Hostile Worlds is the best of Risk of Rain, with hunter swapping, fast-paced action, hero collecting, and everything that needs to be there to make a great game.
Risk of Rain 1 was made 10 years ago now, and I think that we loved the design of that game, we loved a lot of aspects of that game, but we felt like it was showing its age, and we wanted to kind of take that same game and kind of bring it into like 2023.
One of the keys to the longevity of Risk of Rain 1 and Risk of Rain 2 has been the modding community.
Risk of Rain Returns is a game for the fans, right? And so it only makes sense to have them spearheading the project.
We noticed there was a lot of great people in the modding community who were continuing to support the game that we weren't.
I think it made natural sense because they just had a much better understanding of the game at this point.
It's kind of like this nice combination between like the old school version of Risk of Rain and then all the nice stuff from 2 were kind of put together to make Returns. So I think players will like it.
There's a lot of people out in the world that have just so much creative energy for Risk of Rain stuff that it doesn't make sense for us to be in the way.
They understand the universe, they understand what makes it so great. You could have played 100 hours in Risk of Rain 1 and like 100 hours in 2, and you'll find stuff in Returns that you've never seen before.
The present day of Risk of Rain is a lot of expansion.
It's a very rich world that still has a lot of room, even just on this one planet, to do stuff.
The future is very bright for Risk of Rain. There's definitely a want from the community. We want the game to be fun for many, many, many years to come.
I think there's a lot of potential. There's so many things that we haven't explored with the franchise. There's so many different environments that we wanted to do.
When I think about the future of Risk of Rain, one of the things that makes me the most excited is really just like getting the stuff out there. We have a very loyal and very active fan base, and I want to make sure that we're doing right by them. And I'm pretty excited because I think that we're going to.
We're lucky enough to have so many engineers that are also power players of this game. So they give really good feedback on what the community is really looking for in their experience and how to move forward while keeping the core of the franchise intact.
Thank you to Hopoo Games for making such a fantastic IP. Lots of good memories had within it. And good luck to Gearbox, who now has the reins over the IP. We are excited as a community to see what you guys are cooking up next.
The Risk of Rain world's pretty expandable. That's kind of what makes it fun to work on. So we don't have any ideas, but can't wait to see where it goes.
Good luck.